Okay, now I'm going to show you how, once you've built up a lot of assets, we're going to start making your final animation frames. And to do that, you're simply going to keep your storyboard in mind. I like to keep mine up in the corner like this, so I can refer back to it just by clicking on it. And the first frame is easy to build. It's just my character on this grayish background with a shadow. Okay? Now, once I have my first frame built, this is the process I like to use. I'm going to open up a new Photoshop file. I'm going to call it Carl Fry Assignment 5. And I'm going to call this Final Frames. Okay, it's going to be 8 by 8 inches by 150 pixels per inch. All right, now I'm going to swoop that out as its own file. So we're always going to have these two files open now. On this file, I'm going to put my puppet pieces in position, and then I want to flatten them and move them all over onto this. So what do? I have to be on a layer that is showing, so one with an eyeball, and I simply say layer, flatten image. Okay. Then I do select all. Then I do copy, and you'll get really fast at this with the shortcuts. Then I go back to my final frames layer, and I say paste. And now frame 1, layer 1 is also frame 1. It's got everything I need. Okay, frame 2. The problem is I flattened this, right? So I have to go back in my history one step. You can also just do Command Z before we flattened it and copied it, right? To get back to all of your layers. And now we're going to set up our next layer. So first I'm just going to do it with my storyboard. So in the next layer, it says zoom in, move, and smoke. So I haven't built the assets in for zooming in, but how would I do that? I would simply take my character and I would make a duplicate of him, transform, hold down Option, and kind of zoom in. I can turn off the eye and mouth. And then smoke starts to happen, so I turn on a smoke layer. And if that's too dominant, I'm going to take the opacity of that layer down a little bit. Okay. And now this is my second frame. So what do? I say layer, flatten image. So it's all on one layer. Select all, copy, go back here and say paste. And now I have first layer, second layer. These are my storyboards, right? Go here, go back in my history, go to before I flattened, and I'm going to set up my third frame. And this is crouching and smoldering. So now I need to get into the actual movement. So how would I do that? I'm going to take my last creature, which is zoomed in. I'm going to duplicate that, turn off the one before, and I'm going to puppet warp it. So I'm going to go to Edit, Puppet Warp, set my joints. I've shown how this works in the previous video demo. You want to set all of your important joints so that they aren't moved by everything you do, aren't isolated. Okay. And if he's going to crouch, I need to build in quite a few movements. So first movement, it's going to kind of move his elbow down like that. Maybe move this elbow down a little bit, this hand down a little bit, maybe his head down a little bit. See how everything will move in isolation. Maybe he sucks in his gut a little bit. Shuffles his feet. You can build in new joints as you need them. Okay, hit return, and you see the change from this to this is that movement. Okay, and then I might want to change the smoke to something a little bit stronger. Maybe even layer up a few of my smoke asset layers at different opacities. Nothing too strong yet. Build these up at very low opacities. Okay. So, once it looks like everything I want it to look like, now what do? I might even have to make a new shadow because he's moved. I'm going to think of all these things. I'm going to kind of shift my shadow a little bit. Just trying to get the animation, the frames of the storyboard to get started. Okay, now if everything looks the way I want, I'm going to say Layer, Flatten Image, Select All, Copy, Paste. So now I have 3 frames, and you can do kind of an easy animation test just doing this. It's going to look a little choppy because it's just your storyboards, right? These are your key frames, though, the ones you really want to make sure you're doing everything you want. I go back here and I go back in my history before I do anything else and go to before I flatten the image. And now I build my next frame. And now he settles down. So, what is that going to look like? I'm going to duplicate just the creature. I'm going to do puppet warp. And I'm going to make him as hunched as I can using these available tools. Now, I might know I need more than just one frame to show him crouching down all the way. This is a major movement. So I might take it kind of incrementally. But you want to move kind of fast sometimes because you want to get to the parts of the story that are important to your storyboard. So I'm going to build the smoke up a little bit more, let it be a little bit stronger now. I'm going to say flatten all. Flatten image under layer, select all, copy, paste. Okay, so you see the steps I have. It's all following my storyboard. But I'm going to need a little bit more to get him to crouch down, so I'm going to add a frame there. But be guided by your storyboard, otherwise it just gets out of your control and you start animating something that's not very important for a long time. All right, now for this next layer, I'm going to duplicate him here. Same thing again. You're going to do so much repetition, you're going to learn this really well. And it's the same process, whether you're gathering clouds in the sky for your landscape, whether you're moving a creature, whether you're building special effects, setting something on fire. You just build it frame by frame. And isolate the things that matter most. And we're going to tuck in his elbow here. Keep hunching. All right. So it goes from that to that. Now I'm going to build the smoke even more. And what I like about this method is instead of having to program each frame by turning on every layer and setting different opacities, this just builds it for you kind of naturally. Because you're using all of the settings you had before. And I might want to start showing that he's glowing a little bit. All right, so once you have it, let's see, maybe I need to change the shadow a little bit more. No, I'll leave it. I changed it when I zoomed, but I think I'll leave it here. Okay. Gonna flatten the image, select all, copy, move over to here, and now I have some pretty strong movement happening. And am I ready to go on to the next part of the storyboard? Let's see. See, he settles down. I still need a little bit more before I can have that eruption. So this is obviously kind of the big movement where most of the transformation happens. So I'm going to keep working on it with Puppet Warp. I'm getting closer and closer. The only pain with Puppet Warp is having to set your joints each and every time. And if you set too many, it starts to look like it's made of Play-Doh or something instead of a skeletal structure. I'm going to set that hand right into place there. It's going to stay there. I'm going to move the head down. Move the shoulder back. Move the elbow back. Move the hand back. Kind of fitting into this space. In an ideal world, does it all kind of fit together like a transformer? Like that. And now we build up the smoke even more.